We need to talk about Pluribus, because from what I can see online, there seems to be a divide. People who love everything about the show, and people who think it's too slow and boring. And I regret to inform you that I am in the second group. And when I go online and look at the discourse around this series, I find it completely bewildering. Pluribus fans are labeling anyone who dislikes it as either suffering from TikTok brain, lacking media literacy, or being a misogynist. But what if none of those labels apply to you? Is the criticism that it's too slow then valid? For instance, I'm a huge Vince Gilligan fan. I never found Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul slow. I was excited for Pluribus. I wanted to be making videos about the show, analysing the characters and appreciating its structure. I don't even use TikTok. I don't generally even watch superhero movies or explodey CGI blockbusters, as they're not my thing. I typically like character-driven, medium-budget stories. And yet, after almost every episode of Pluribus's first season, I feel shortchanged, and frankly just confused about the praise the show is receiving. Is it just that it's Vince Gilligan and that alone means it must be genius? Honestly, I feel like I'm Carol and all the hardcore fans and critics are the hive mind trying to convince me that this is peak television.
You people are brainwashed. Let me guess. It's all beautiful scenery, and you feel nothing but contentment. Just wave after wave of bliss.
Don't get me wrong, there are things I appreciate about the show. The cinematography, the acting, and the premise poses interesting questions about what we actually value about being alive and having autonomy. But whenever I watch it, I find myself just coming to terms with the reality that I'm not actually enjoying myself. I don't feel anything about what's happening. It's just flat. For those that do like it, great. I'm happy for you. And I get that when you like something it feels like everything is in its right place, and therefore all criticism feels nitpicky and fundamentally wrong. So I thought I should make a video explaining why people who find it too slow are completely justified to feel that way. As it's not that they're suffering from TikTok brain, they're experiencing every other movie or TV show ever made brain. As I would argue that no other series is as slow as Pluribus, after its first episode. I've seen accounts on Twitter claim that people complaining just aren't used to the slow pace of Vince Gilligan's shows. Not true. Most people watching Pluribus are watching it because they were fans of his previous series. Another claim is that some people thought Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul were slow at first too. And that may be true for Better Call Saul, but Breaking Bad just took time to get popular. It was never really slow. As just think about how much happened in season 1. How much we knew about the characters, and how many situations they were in that tested them to reveal more about what they truly valued. Now I'll grant you that some people did used to say Better Call Saul or even The Wire were slow, as they do take time to get into. But even then, when people describe them as slow, that's just because there isn't a clear, simple goal from the offset. There are character studies that do meander a bit in terms of direct plot, but there are lots of little mini-plots, obstacles, and storylines that reveal more about the characters and the world they live in. When you're watching those series, you still get a sense that they're just planting seeds and watering them so that they'll gradually blossom into bigger conflicts. Whereas with Pluribus, there is a strong premise in the first episode, which moves at a regular pace, and then it sort of screeches to a halt, and we're now just stuck in a bizarre Twilight Zone situation. Which honestly wouldn't be a problem if there were little subplots that revealed more about the characters and exposed their true nature. Because after watching the entire first season, I still don't feel like I really know these characters. There are no character dynamics that provide conflict value or understanding. By comparison, at the end of Better Call Saul's first season, I knew all about Jimmy's background and his relationship with his brother Chuck. Every episode had him getting into trouble, pulling little scams, culminating in the painful realization that his own brother has been trying to sabotage his career from day one. So for fans of Pluribus, I have to ask, what is the central relationship of the show that viewers are meant to be invested in? Now I know that the premise automatically restricts these possibilities as there are only 12 other humans that are not infected with the virus. But why do we know so little about any of them? What are their strengths and weaknesses, their moral code, their values, and how do they react when those values get tested? For most viewers, we can only really think about the characters and get excited about what they might do next if we understand them. And we can only really understand them by seeing how they overcome a variety of different obstacles, which Pluribus just doesn't seem to have any interest in doing so far. Let's get into it. I think the problems start in episode 2 when Carol meets the 5 other non-infected humans who speak English. Carol wants to save the world and reverse whatever's happened, but everyone else doesn't. Their reasoning is that there's now world peace and they're treated like gods. One girl even wants to join the hive mind so she can be at one with her family, and the others seem to just not view it as a problem and are only focused on the well-being of their family members. This lack of reaction serves the story by isolating Carol, but I just don't find it believable. Really? No one is concerned about the 886 million people who've died? They don't see any issue with everyone they love turning into a polite member of the hive mind? Why not? And most importantly, fine, if they feel that way at first because they're scared or appreciative of how they're being treated, but will they always feel this way? If they just split the story from time to time to show them struggling with their new reality and coming to terms with losing their loved ones' authentic personalities, it would make way more sense, and provide new creative ways of delivering information. But by never diverting to a B or C story, Pluribus puts so much pressure on Carol to carry the full weight of the series. But we have to remember, she's only one perspective of what's happened. Her perspective is she's tragically lost her wife Helen, so her grief and reaction makes sense in isolation. But she doesn't seem to have anyone else she knows or values who are still alive, as that would then allow us to see the struggle of seeing someone you love change. Yet there is an opportunity for us to get to know all of these other characters and their struggles with the new situation if they just split up the story a bit. I mean, is it possible that they change their mind? Currently, no. They just don't like Carol and her angry personality, as it risks killing off more people as the hive mind reacts fatally to any form of conflict. Which might be an amusing comedy sketch for a single scene, but it doesn't really get us anywhere in terms of developing the story. If anything ever gets too antagonistic, boom, they're on the ground convulsing. It's genuinely so frustrating because it keeps the story in first gear. Meanwhile, Kumba is the only one who seems to really love this version of reality, as he gets to live out his dreams of acting like the emperor of the world and sleeping with as many beautiful women as he wants. But does he ever have doubts? What was his life like before all of this? Does he never see the people he used to know anymore? Does he feel a sense of loss? Does he get bored of always winning and never struggling? This is where I think flashbacks, which I'm typically not even fond of, would serve the show well here. Show us how these characters lived their lives before the virus took over, as that should provide pivotal insight into how they're reacting to what's happening now. Are they good people, bad people? We don't know, because in season 1, they're treated like meaningless bystanders who don't have any clear purpose. For instance, we know that Laxmi values her family, but if we dug into her past and why she is the way she is, then we might uncover some interesting conflicts by seeing her interacting with her family and struggling to adapt to the change. Instead, all of these characters are mostly ignored. They are apparently all in a group chat without Carol, but that doesn't provide us with much to get invested in. I mean, what do they talk about? Do they disagree? Why? Anything? Instead, they're sidelined to make room for Carol, who I also expected way more from. The most interesting revelation of the season was that Carol's mother sent her to a conversion therapy camp in Tennessee called Freedom Falls. This beautifully explains why Carol doesn't like the hive mind, as they treat her the same way the people at the camp apparently did. All smiles and manners while suppressing her natural human instincts. I want more of this than just a few lines of dialogue. Now maybe they'll do this later, but it really would have been a powerful foundation to add to season 1 to show us what Freedom Falls was actually like. It's really just the basics of filmmaking. Show, don't tell. Show us where Carol experienced this behavior before and let the viewer draw a comparison to what she's seeing now. For instance, in episode 9, when Zoja tells Carol, "We have to do this because we love you," it would have been so much more meaningful if we had heard her mother say these same words to her back when she was dropping her off at Freedom Falls, rather than just vaguely assuming that ourselves. Also, given grieving the loss of Helen was a theme throughout season 1, It would have been nice to actually get to see some good parts of their relationship too. Instead, the parts we do see feel strained. We do get one flashback at an ice hotel in Norway, where we can see that Carol is the same cold complainy pants, while Helen is the pragmatic optimist. Then we find out that Helen actually thought Carol's Why Caro series were cotton candy for the public, and she didn't really like her unpublished novel. That's not great. Also, what were Helen's values, and how do they influence how Carol is behaving after her death? Now, if you're a fan of how Pluribus has played out so far, you might think, well, they'll get to all of that later, maybe, probably, but where would they even cram in all of those extra scenes? Oh, I don't know, maybe they could replace the incredibly lengthy travel sequences, or maybe some of Carol sitting in her house alone or going to the supermarket. And this is the real issue I have with Pluribus. It doesn't feel like it respects my time. 40 to 60 minutes every week, and it's like, here you go, here's a plane taking off and landing, and some drone delivery shots, which are the parts of our own lives that most of us just forget about because nothing of interest occurs. I get that they're trying to highlight the emptiness of this new world, and it's maybe a commentary on how modern technology makes us all feel more isolated. But okay, we get it. Do it once and move on. In episode 2, it takes Zoja 7 minutes and 35 seconds to just get on the plane she's going to fly to Carol. Then another 2 minutes and 2 seconds to get to Carol. It's a 60-minute episode, and we've just spent over 15% of it on getting one character from one place to another. Then in the next episode, when Carol wants to do something simple, like going to the supermarket, it takes 6 minutes for her to get there, realize it's empty, call the hive mind, have them arrive and replenish the shelves, and then have her do her shopping. The episode is 41.5 minutes long, so this sequence was over 14% of the entire episode. Then there's the drone sequences that drag on for a minimum of 30 seconds each time, and the helicopter shots that go on for even longer. And the repetitive answering machine message that only lasts for 20 seconds but plays 7 times over the course of 3 episodes. Sure, all of this adds to a feeling of isolation, but also boredom. Because if you are media literate, when these sequences begin, your brain automatically fills in the blanks of, okay, this character is traveling from here to here. It's a delivery, or it's the same answering machine message, but then has to wait for it all to unfold. And it tends to unfold without any surprise or conflict. All of this could be done much quicker while still giving a similar effect, which would free up a lot more time for things to happen, characters to interact, or flashback to before the virus to learn more about the character's foundations. For example, if you've ever seen The Last Man on Earth, where Will Forte is the last man in existence after a virus wipes out the rest of the planet, here's everything that gets communicated in the opening 10 minutes. On-screen text, 2020, 1 year after the virus. We see him driving all over the country searching for people, which is established quickly by showing him crossing off states on the map. He screams alone in the RV, demonstrating his frustration with isolation. He finds the house he wants, gets all the items he wants, talks to God, goes shopping, looks at a mannequin and gets tempted because he hasn't seen a woman in so long. He then does everything he thinks will keep him entertained. There's even a flashback of his birthday surrounded by loved ones that we can compare to his current birthday all alone. He then becomes a reckless nihilist, drinking himself to death. I shit you not, all of that happens in 10 minutes. Whereas in Pluribus, it takes almost 10 minutes just for Manusos to receive Carol's tape and start leaving Paraguay. Here's how it plays out. He's doing his wave frequency research. Hears the car arrive, looks out the window. We then see him walking, knocking over the food the hive mind have provided for the second time, discovering the tape, walking back inside, turning on the television, opening the cassette player, putting the tape in, sitting down, and watching the full video of Carol talking. Inspired, he leaves his compound, walks the streets, goes to his old house, looks around, gets his old car, runs into his mother, tells her off, and drives away. Why not do this in 4 or 5 shots, or just quicker cuts? We know what's going to happen and no one stops him, so why show us every single step? Now, people may argue that the time spent shows his character and really places us in the location and space of the scene. But what other TV show or movie spends this long on something this routine? Long shots and sequences in film are typically reserved for critical moments, either to build suspense or show us something of real significance. But when you overuse them for everything, nothing feels important. And if you're not valuing our time by making it worthwhile for us to endure the sequence for some sort of payoff, then that invisible line between storyteller and viewer becomes strained. This is a problem that actually gets worse as the show progresses, as once Carol is abandoned by the hive mind, she now has no one to interact with, which completely stalls any real character development. And in episode 7, the full 44-minute duration is spent either watching Manusos starting his journey from Paraguay, which is technically a montage but still takes up way too much time, or watching an idle Carol try to fill her time by entertaining herself but slowly losing her willpower, which really didn't need to take up 44 minutes. I know this may come as a surprise, but watching one character become bored of their own company in real time is boring. And if you wanted to get a sense of Manusos and how he does everything without any assistance and suffers because of it, you could still include all of those key details and just edit them together faster. Because by the end of the first season, it just doesn't feel like much progress has been made after the first episode. There are no mini plot lines or resolutions. Carol is a writer, but beyond asking some pointed questions, she's not really equipped to deal with this situation. Now, nobody would be, so she doesn't have to be the perfect person to deal with this, but she should have some skill set that's already shining. I mean, here's the overview of her first season. She started the second episode wanting to save the human race, found out little bits of information like the virus can be reversed and that they eat humans, flip-flopped for a bit, and then ended the season deciding that she should actually save the human race. So she basically ended the season in a similar spot to where she started in episode 2, except now Manusos is the game changer. Which is why I would say that episode 9 is where the story really started, and felt like it should have been the midpoint of the season as opposed to the end. Now, if you disagree with all of this and think Pluribus's pace is perfectly fine and normal, I have to wonder, what were your favourite moments of the first season? Carol sitting around, shopping, clumsily smearing avocado across her toast? Because for me it was when Manusos finally arrived and the two disagreeable characters now have to figure out how to work together. Why? Because there's conflict, there's difference, there's some semblance of a dynamic developing, even if it's in the beginning stages. The writers also introduced a clearer ticking clock, that the hive mind can take Carol's stem cells from her frozen eggs without her consent, which injects some much needed life into the story. So if you think critics of the pacing of the show are TikTok-brained and just need stuff to happen like character dynamics or plot twists and turns to keep them interested, are you then turned off when something does actually happen? Are scenes like this Pluribus selling out and getting worse when it really should be carving out more time for travel sequences or Carol sitting in her house bored so we can all relive COVID? Or are you only enjoying the pace purely on the expectation that it does actually go somewhere? What if this season finale was actually the finale of the entire show? What would you feel? What would it have achieved or resolved? Surely the moments you cherish from your favourite movies and TV series are filled with conflict, whether it's emotional or physical. So why does the lack of it in Pluribus constitute a form of brilliance? There is plenty of room for interesting character dynamics and conflicts and even suspense, but the first season seems hellbent on manufacturing the perfect conditions for none of it to happen. For instance, when Carol visits Kumba to inform him that the hive mind eat people, this should be a big deal. But it turns out he already knows, and is kind of relaxed about it, and the explanation from the hive mind is pretty reasonable, so it doesn't add much tension to proceedings. Oh well. Why we don't see him discovering this information first? We had better things to focus on. Now you might think, surely freaked out by this new revelation, Carol will want to be closer to her fellow man for safety reasons. So she'll logically stay in a hotel near Kumba and he can become a more prominent character we grow to understand. But no, she only jokes about staying as they both enjoy their space, so back to isolation we go. Then when Manusos arrives and finds a motion sensor in her drinks cabinet that could indicate the hive mind relying and are actually spying on her, potentially upping the stakes and spiraling the story into conflict, no, it turns out that was placed there by Helen to monitor Carol's drinking. Phew, nothing to see here. The main, if not only, character dynamic we get throughout the first season is Carol talking to Zoja. But these moments aren't particularly compelling because Zoja is just a representative of the hive mind, so there isn't really a flowing conversation happening.
I don't know what to talk about.
Who says we have to?
She answers questions like a corporate AI, but that is the dynamic. Carol asking questions, leading to endless information dumps, all done through telling rather than showing. So we have this high-concept sci-fi premise, but then it's populated by a bunch of corporate dialogue exchanges. The things that do happen slowly, sometimes insanely slowly, and then mostly get diffused. This all gives the impression that as captivating as the premise of Pluribus is, there isn't actually that much material to work with, as the complexities of the premise corner you into a position where no conflict is really possible. So they need to pad it out and focus on how it would feel to be in this situation day to day. Strangely, I would be totally accepting of this if it were a movie, as that's a singular viewing experience you enter, feel and exit. But for a series, you need something to hold on to bring you back week after week. Something that gets the audience's creative juices flowing, wondering what might happen next. Because as it stands, and I hope this changes, I didn't really look forward to the next episode of Pluribus. I didn't think about the characters or wonder what was going to happen next the way I would with Gilligan's previous work. I would sit down and watch it purely because I have faith in Vince Gilligan to pull it off. But it feels like being breadcrumbed, being thrown these tiny slivers of information that are then swiftly diffused. No character backgrounds, no developed character dynamics. I like the theme music, but the score itself is nowhere near as captivating as the likes of Severance. I don't know, it's just plodding along. And I hope to be proven wrong in season 2. Now that the two main characters are together, I genuinely want it to launch into second or third gear, and then we can all look back at this season as completely necessary setup. But at the moment, anyone who says the show is too sluggish isn't TikTok-brained or media illiterate. They're just conditioned from decades of regular-paced storytelling from the same acclaimed filmmakers who made Pluribus. It is not normal to spend 15% of an episode on travel or grocery shopping with little to no payoff. It's not normal to have most of the dialogue be purely exposition through questions and answers. Nor is it normal for there to be no resolutions to even a side plot. And the more hardcore fans and glowing reviews insist that this is actually sublime storytelling, that the pacing is perfect and the characters are immaculately detailed, the more I feel like Carol, lost, confused, and wishing things would go back to the way things were. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching. But if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing.